To do a virtual background.
All right. Looks like we are live. What's up, Daric? How you doing,
Live.
man?
What is up? I am doing great. I am here with my son. So if you hear some background noise, that's what it is.
Hey, yeah, most of us have family, so no worries there. Uh, what's up, buddy? You can hear us in the background?
He's going to go work out. He's
There you
got
go.
the foam roller out.
Nice. Hey, man, thanks for taking the time. I know you're a busy man, and I wanted to hop on and go over a little bit more of the sub twos. I know it's one of those mysteries in real estate for most people. And I know you've been doing it for a little while now, and it's really nice to have someone that can really talk to it. And I know I've been picking your brain about it for a little while now, and trying to better understand it, so I can help clients that may be in a certain situation that apply that. But I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right into it, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. These podcasts are always fun to be on. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know who you're going to help. So a little bit of background on
100.
myself. I do not come from the real estate world. I come from the baseball world, where I got to live a dream for 16 years and play baseball professionally. After retiring, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life. Kind of went through some identity issues and sat around for 3 years playing video games and kind of being a bad example to my kids. Probably not the best husband either, right? Um, so that kind of led me into investing in real estate or finding a way to have some sort of purpose again, which led me to real estate. So my wife is a developer or works for a developer, and her dreams and goals were to build a portfolio. Long story short, I ended up joining a real estate mentorship. Although we don't call it a mentorship, we call it a community called Sub2 with Pace Morby. And this guy is a creative genius, not just in real estate, but in all things life. I mean, he's teaching us how to buy cars, creative finance. He's teaching us how to buy boats, RVs, businesses. I mean, the list goes on and on. The value that he brings is tremendous. So, got into real estate, and people talk about you're able to buy a house with no money out of your pocket, no credit checks, no credentials, all this stuff. And of course, you're gonna question it, right? And it really wasn't until I joined his community where, I got to see it happen constantly, and I'm like, how are they doing this? How is this legal, right? Because that's one of the biggest things. Like, is this even legal? And obviously, we have attorneys that are constantly updating our contracts and making sure that we're in compliance with everything. And so it wasn't until I worked with one of your partners, Tess, to where I actually
Yeah.
got my first investment property, and I bought it subject to.
Right.
So it was ever since then where I'm like, man, this is incredible. We helped somebody out of a tough situation. They were in pre foreclosure at the time. They just stopped paying the mortgage and moved to New York and just kind of gave up on it, hoping it would sell on the market. They owed more than they could get for it on the market, and so we ended up coming in and taking over their mortgage payments. And it just so happened to be that their interest rate was 2.6%. And so for
Ooh,
us, long term, like that interest rate is gold because we'll never ever see that again in our lifetimes. I don't believe.
never.
That's
Yeah, I
kind of how
agree
it all
with you.
started.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Tess Gascon, she's an awesome real estate agent here in Colorado Springs. She was kind of my mentor. I was on her team for a while, and everyone kind of parts ways eventually. But I know she's fantastic. She's a great resource to have in Colorado. Yeah, it's cool that we kind of met. I remember, I think it was actually through Tess, obviously, that you came out for a baseball game, and you were able to get us on for doing some dude, what was it? Was it batting practice or something like that? which is cool, just cool experience. But I think what I value there is the relationships in that and learning through the process. So it's pretty cool. But talking the sub 2 thing, you know, coming from, I know Pace, he's well known. He is a genius, and he's doing, you know, awesome, a lot of things, probably more than I could even imagine right now. But on the sub 2 side, people are like, okay, what is it? Like, what does that even mean, right? And I know from my experience, I've had a couple of scenarios where my clients might not be able to sell their home traditionally. And when I mean traditionally, saying, you know, put it on the market with a real estate agent or even FSBO, whatever approach you want to take. So can you kind of explain at what point do you usually come into a transaction, or well, it's not transaction yet, but what point do you kind of come in to the part and start talking? Because I know usually it's a conversation where like, hey, what do you need? What are your goals? How do we get through this or problem, right? Creating solutions. So
Yep. Yeah. So really, just like you said, our main goal is to solve whatever problem the seller has. Um, and so we have to figure out, okay, well, what are they trying to accomplish? You know, what's their exit strategy? Where are they going next? What's the problem? Like, are they able to sell the house? Usually, the majority of the time, I would say that the house, they can't sell it on the market for
right,
whatever reason. They keep lowering the price, lowering the price, lowering the price. But again, a house is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. So once we determine what the problem is, we then try to offer them a solution. Now, I'll be the first one to say buying a house subject to is never the first option. Um, it's, you know, nobody, because what happens is when you buy a house subject to, essentially you're leaving the loan in your name. Okay. And so, yes, there's going to be risk involved in that. So that's why it's super important to build a relationship and understand whoever it is that's trying to buy your house this way is a credible person, not somebody who's just, you know, going to get the property under contract and sell it.
right,
Wholesalers have probably don't have the best name, and that's because in our experience, they don't always care about the seller. Like for us, it's like, okay, well, if we're agreeing to take over somebody's loan, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we take care of that loan and pay that loan on time every month. That's what we're agreeing to.
right,
And so if there's a problem, right, the other problem is pre-foreclosure. If someone's in pre-foreclosure and they don't have the money to pay off the arrears, and it's not selling on the market, what other options do you have? You know, you go into foreclosure, your credit's screwed for 7 years. And
yeah,
so
it's
that's
damaging.
where, yeah. And so it's really just, hey, what solutions do we have and what problems do they have? And let's mix and match and see what we can do. And the sub 2 is a tremendous option, especially in the last 2 years, because people bought houses in 2021 and 2022 top dollar, overpaying for
Yep.
housing, right? But the interest rates were 2.5 to 4.5%. So the interest rates were good. Well, now the market has corrected a little bit, so they're and for whatever reason they have to sell. Colorado Springs or Colorado in general, there's a lot of military. So what we found is that whether they're getting stationed somewhere else and having to move within 2 months, or maybe they're retiring and they're going back home, whatever the case may be, there's a lot of VA loans that don't have any equity in their housing, in their house. So they can't sell it on the market because they have to charge a certain amount to cover what they owe, or else
Right.
they're going to come out of pocket. So, yeah, it's really about solving somebody's problem and seeing if we can find a win-win solution.
Yeah, that's what I initially picked up is it's a solution oriented approach. It's not a one stop shop. It's not a oh, this is exactly how you do it. Because I think I remember talking to you. I was like, so how do you exactly do it? And you're like, that's not really how it works, right? And it's like, well, give me a situation and I'll tell you how and why if I know what the goal is. So yeah, definitely understand. I think one thing that comes up with clients are like, well, if I'm leaving this in my name, I'm therefore responsible for the loan. How do I know that risk are being mitigated on my end? So and I know there's contracts in play, but can you talk to a little bit about the risk mitigation from the client side, right? Obviously, from your side, it's different, but from the client side, assuring them that hey, we're in it, we have a stake in this as well, and here's how we approach this.
Yeah. So the way we think now, if you want to go technicalities, essentially the protections that they have are basically in a promissory note, in a deed of trust, right? And so if the buyer were to default, their solution is having to foreclose. Okay,
Right.
that is just the reality of the matter. Um, for us, obviously, we want to try to avoid that because we should only be buying that if it's going to be a profitable business decision.
Yes.
So if we cannot also benefit from it, meaning if we can't rent it out for a profit, unless you have millions and millions of dollars and like Pace. So Pace will buy houses that don't cash flow because he makes so
Just
much
for
money.
equity.
He needs the depreciation.
Hmm.
He doesn't want to pay taxes. It's beautiful. They created a
Yeah.
system in which we can leverage. We can buy real estate, depreciate our taxable income, and not pay taxes. So, unless you're a baller like that, um,
Yeah.
you want to make sure the property cash flows. And for us, we don't want to default on something because it's an asset for us. And
Right.
so, say we have, we buy a house and here we are 3-4 years down the line and we miss a payment, or maybe we miss two payments and they can foreclose on us. Well, we've already paid the loan down for the last 2 years. And so, like, say, for instance, you have an interest rate of less than 4%. Well, that's going to be paying down not super fast, but it's going to be paid down
Much faster.
faster,
Yeah.
right? And so, not only that, but historically, houses appreciate as well. So, the best case for the seller is that we pay down the loan for 10 years and then we're late on a payment and they foreclose on us. We would really shoot ourselves in the foot at that point.
And to interject real quick, and that what that means on the client side is that if Derek's team or they get foreclosed on, that means the house goes back to the original note owner. So for you guys that are listening, so at the end of the day, you're kind of hoping that they do it right. They're like, hey, I'm paying your mortgage off, but everyone's situation is a little different. So yeah, sorry to
Yeah,
interject there, but yeah,
yeah.
you
And
know,
another thing, right? So, like, let's just say somebody's house is worth 500,000. Okay. Um, they will not sell it for less than 500,000, and say they have $250,000 left on the balance, and so technically they have 250,000 equity. So in those types of situations, so subject to just means you're buying something subject to whatever that is. So you can buy it subject to the existing loan, you can buy it subject to another agreement, or however you're purchasing it. So subject to is just and if you look on the HUD, right? I forgot what line it is, 513 or something like that. It talks about, purchasing it via subject to, or
mhm.
purchase via conventional loan, or whatever it says. So say you have a house, but you have a bunch of equity. Well, we can take over the existing loan payments, that has the $250,000 balance, and then you have your equity. And in that case, we would negotiate a down payment to your equity. Say you call it 25 or 50 grand, whatever that number is, towards your equity, and then make you payments based on a certain time frame. Now, if we default
Right.
in that situation, you get to keep the down payment that we gave you, all of the monthly payments, and we've paid down the note for the time that we own the property. So I would say that's probably a better situation for a seller to benefit, because they get to keep whatever the down payment is we give them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, look, we're in the business of making money, so we should be making decisions based off of the profitability of the property. Um, and that's kind of how we look at it. We don't plan on missing any payments, right? We want the asset. The asset is how you build generational wealth, is through, holding on
Yes.
to
Yeah.
assets.
100%. Um,
I don't know if that answered your
so
question, but
yeah, no, absolutely it does. And I want to kind of dig in a little bit more. Maybe trying to think of a scenario. So, for instance, I have a client who's in a home that are, I don't know, we're $350,000. They bought it for a couple years ago, and a 4.5, 5% rate, but they don't have much equity. Is the equity, not having much equity, is that what you see the most on sub two deals? It's like, hey, I can't sell it because I don't have the equity to pay for the agent, or even try to do it myself, or whatever the case may be. Is that kind of one of the most common situations?
yes, it is one of the most common situations, but we also go and look for those specific properties. So we
Gotcha.
have a software system where we could put filters, right? We can filter out houses that were bought within the last 2 years with a FHA loan or a VA loan, because you put little to no money down with those types of loans, and
Right.
um, and that are on the market. So they bought it within the last 2 years. It's on the market again. They didn't put any money down. We know that they don't have equity.
Yeah.
So we actually go and look for those. So yes, that is one of the main ones, and the other ones, the pre foreclosure list, where typically they usually have a little bit more equity, um, so you can work something out with them. But yeah, I would say the majority of the time it's the no equity.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, do you any particular challenges that come up on a frequent basis that you guys have to kind of work through, or is it all case by case situations?
As far as what goes, are we talking about on our side, on their side? Title
Either
company?
really, I would say. Well, maybe not on your side, because I know that gets a little it can become a little complicated, but more on the client side, getting through potentially legal or contract, or down payment, or any challenges that would arise during a typical transaction. It's up to you. I guess that's a open-ended question, but
Yeah,
um,
there's a ton
if
of challenges. There's a ton of challenges. There's a ton of objections. Um,
that might be
yeah,
actually a good starting point. Or I guess, what are some of the objections that clients you're
yeah.
faced with?
Well, there's two main ones, right? The two main questions are, what happens if you default, which we kind of
Right.
touched on it, right? They
Yep.
essentially, you're going to have to foreclose on the buyer. And the other one is the due on sale clause. Okay, so the due on sale clause is this. We like to call it the boogeyman, because in lending documents they have something called, the due on sale clause, which states,
Yep.
in case of a deed transferring, we have the ability to call that loan due. Now, they don't have the obligation to call that loan due, but they have the right to, if they wanted to.
Right.
Well, that should always be one of the first concerns, right? Because it's one of those things where it's a possibility, but these banks have so many loans out. They don't have somebody going through every single file looking at whether or not the deed has transferred. But
Right.
to mitigate that, or to, I guess, if that were to happen, and the percentages are like, less than 1% chance. It rarely happens. Um,
Right.
but what happens is, okay, let's talk about what happens in the hypothetical chance. We call the lender, right? We talk to the lender. We say, hey, this is what's going on. We took over, we bought this house subject to, we took over the payments. We're now in charge of making the payments. And let's just say,
Yep.
because the banks aren't in the business of owning homes. So the last thing they're going to want to do is, take it back, especially if we're performing on the note. Now,
Exactly.
one can argue that, hey, you have a 3% interest rate. The current rates are at 6.5%, 7%. Do they want to take that chance? I don't know. Like, people aren't qualifying as well as they were before. So the first option is calling the bank, talking to them about what we're doing, and hey, we're performing on the note. This is the situation. If they say no, we're not going to accept it. We already have an agreement in place with the seller that states, hey, look, in the hypothetical chance that they call it due, here's what'll happen. We can deed the property back into your name, and then we can either buy it on an agreement for sale, which keeps the deed in your name, right? It's kind of like when you're buying a car. You don't get the pink slip until it's paid in full. It's called different things in different states. I'm not sure what it's called in Colorado. There's that option, right? So you buy it on the agreement for sale. And then also another option is you can put it into either into an LLC or into a trust. And, both parties are named on the trust as members, and the seller and the buyer, I believe. I haven't had to go through that one yet. I know our mentor Pace just did this not too long ago. So I'll try to figure out what that looks like. But there are ways to go about it. Now, in the worst case scenario, we've basically agreed that we would refinance the property. So, I mean, that's worst case scenario.
Right. That's worst exit strategy. You might lose a little near term, but it's still able to keep the asset. And I think that's the ultimate goal.
As far as I know from Pace, that's never happened. Nobody has had to refinance a property in order to, clear that up.
Yeah. And for anybody that has paid attention to Pace, like, he does a lot of these, right? So
all day long.
It's like you see him on his Instagrams, on his YouTube, and his everywhere. He's just like, he's signing, he's turning the page, he's doing it all day long. So I think that is worth something. I was gonna say is, do you think the market where it's at right now, is it most ideal? And when I say where the market's at, and I'll speak to Colorado specifically, it's kind of almost a stalemate, right? We're not going anywhere because there's limited inventory. The rates are a little high. They came back down. So now it's a question of educating buyers to say, hey, actually now's a great time to buy because the rates aren't too high, right? And you could potentially refinance down the road. But it takes a little while for people to catch on. So there's not a whole lot of activity. It's January. We're going to go into spring, hopefully into a really great year for both buyers and sellers. But do you think the current market right now is great for sub twos, or because of the high rates, or do you think there's a future sub twos that's optimal elsewhere? Maybe a trick question. So
I think it will always be a good time for sub two deals. I just think right now it's the combination of all the low interest rate loans. A lot of people aren't selling because they got locked in at a 2 to 4% rate.
Yep.
And they're like, even if I had to move, why would I
downsize for a higher price mortgage, right? It's
right.
Yeah. Yep. That's
so
why
people are like, look, I think a lot of people are realizing that their interest rate is the gold, right? It's that thing that we may never see again. As far as the market goes, look, any market's going to be good for sub two.
You just have to get out there and find them.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing. And then the other thing right now, maybe it's a good time for sub two now, but because they bought so high, it's harder to cash flow even with a lower interest rate, because the rent rate compared to the mortgage doesn't add up. right? So you're having
Right.
to find other ways to profit. So, okay, if it doesn't cash flow as a long-term rental, which you should always I got my thumbs up. You should always underwrite it as a long-term rental, right? Now, if it doesn't work as a long-term rental, then what are your options? Well, you could do an Airbnb. Colorado has terrible restrictions on Airbnbs. So then you can do we actually have
Midterm potentially.
you
Traveling
can
nurses. Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
do a midterm. Yeah, absolutely. Which um now it's about the operator, in my opinion, for midterm rentals. Like we have one here that does tremendous and it
And
goes,
the platform. Yep.
we don't even use a platform.
Okay.
She has direct access to insurance, like insurance claims, like
Hmm.
insurance adjusters. So our monthly rate, rental rate in the area on our property here is 2,500 or 2,800, and we're getting we got 8,500 for 5 months. We just got 7,000 for another 2 months, and then we have somebody coming for spring training for a month and a half at like 10 grand.
Oh,
So
wow.
if you know, it's about the operator and who they know and how they can do it. Now, midterm rentals, a lot of people think traveling nurses, right? If you go look on Furnished Finder, you're only getting 3,000 to 3,500 a month on some of the properties out there.
Right.
So there's that, and then I don't know if you guys do pad split out there, and that's like co-living where you rent out the room by the week, which is a crazy concept.
Mm. That is crazy concept. I don't think I've heard of pad split. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. So what they
Yeah.
do is basically they take a house and they try to maximize the bedrooms, right? So say it's a 4-bed, 3-bath. You could turn that in.
Strangers basically sharing it.
It's weird, but people do it. I wouldn't do it. I have a family,
No.
but not
Yeah.
everybody
Same.
has that option, right? Like, um,
Oh, yeah. Rent a private room and move in fast.
yeah. So they
But-
take a 3 or 4 bedroom and they turn it into a 7 or 8 bedroom, and they rent it out at $150 per week per room. Times that by 7, you're looking at, you can cash flow pretty well with those, and they run it.
Nice.
So I mean, you have to figure out what.
Sorry if I cut out there.
No, it's all right. You just have to figure out, what options you have.
Yeah. Um, so on the so we talked a little bit about the client side and if people are, in a particular situation, there's options for them. But what if you're an investor and you're looking at getting into the sub two? What's some advice you can give to someone that's just starting out, or any? Obviously, Pace has his groups and everything like that, but any advice on that?
Yeah, there's a free Facebook group. There's like 130,000 people in it. It's growing so fast and it's free. And a lot of times what people end up doing is they go into there and they network with people. And a lot of it's finding the opportunity, right? So if you find the opportunity, now you could do this yourself. You can go on Zillow and go look up houses that have been listed on the market for 90 days or longer. Okay, and typically when a house has been on the market 90 days or longer, there's a little bit more motivation, right? They want to sell it. And
Yeah.
so, that's a free way to go market and at least talk to agents. And I mean, we're gonna suck. We all suck at first. It's hard, like making calls to agents. And look, I used to feel bad that I didn't know too much about the creative stuff. The agents don't know anything about the creative stuff either.
It's crazy how many agents I talk to, and I consider myself a very very novice in the subject, and even I'm going over things. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of agents that have they're like, I've heard of sub two, but it's they see it as like, okay, our some of the brokerages or the MLSs are really like, oh, don't do sub two because it's a risk to your client and you can get sued. And I think that comes back to one. knowing what you're doing, and then two, who you're actually doing business with, right? And that's for anything we do in life. But I think specifically to sub two, right? People are like, oh, I don't know what it is. There's risk involved, so I don't want to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, there's risk driving your car down the road too, but you do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, where can you mitigate it? And again, it's a relationship thing. I want to build, if I'm buying a house subject to with somebody, I want to build a relationship with them because it is a long-term thing. I could
Yes.
potentially have that house for the remainder of their whole loan. Now, on average, we probably will refinance within 7 to 10 years anyways to, capitalize on whatever
Yeah.
equity there is.
Rates are going on. Is there, that's actually a good question. Are there any, because I know we talked about this, it's like, okay, we'll put in within 5 years, we'll refinance. And then what is that to do? Is that to help the seller ensure that, like, okay, I'm getting out of this? Is that their exit strategy? Obviously yours as well if the rates come down, right? But what's that approach look like?
I would say this: if we're buying a house subject to, we don't ever want to refinance out. We would rather just hold that, right? Because it's probably a pretty good rate,
Oh, good rate, yeah.
more than
Yeah.
likely. Now I won't say that we don't agree, because a lot of the time people are like, well, how am I going to go buy another house? Like, I want to go buy another house. We're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, here's one answer, or here's one, solution to that problem is we can basically, we also have lenders in our community that we can connect people with who understand what we're doing. So say we draw up a lease and we pay them that amount that's on the lease, right? So what you have to do is figure out what the new I forgot this actual mechanics of it, but if the lease is 75% of whatever the new loan
Yeah,
is.
you can use 75% of that income value towards your debt to income ratio. So yeah, we see that a lot. And I think a good scenario would be like, okay, I've got this house. I don't have any equity in it. I want to go buy a new house in another state or whatever. Hey, we'll give you their down payment and we're going to do your lease for X amount of terms in order for you to get pre-approved for a new lease. Is that the approach that you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way. That's an objection, right? And this was talking about the 5-year balloon, essentially, is what you call it.
Yep.
Now, it'll happen. Usually we don't want anything less than 7 years. And the reason why is because when you buy a house, if you do the rapid depreciation, you could basically write off 7 years of depreciation on that first year, right? Minus the land value. So whatever the house is worth, call it
Right.
$400,000. You depreciate that over 27 and a half years, right? So let's just say 400,000 divided by 27 and a half years, because that's the IRS telling you that's how long your house is going to last until you have to redo it. That's basically what they're saying.
Right.
So that's $14,500 a year that you can write off or take off your taxable income. Now you can do that for 7 years, the first year you buy it. So you can essentially write off over $100,000 of your taxable income that first year, if you do that.
Crazy.
So now if we give them a 5-year balloon and we use that rapid depreciation, well, now the IRS is going to come back to us after 5 years and
Recoup.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, no, you can't do that.
Can't get both.
That's right. So
Yeah.
that's usually why there's that. We like to get, minimum 7 years. People will do, 5 years, 3 years is almost impossible because look, we have to refinance out. So we have to pay the loan down enough to qualify. If we can't qualify, we can't refinance out. So if you said you want it out in 3 years, well, now you're putting us in a tough position because we can't pay the loan down to 75% value or 80% value, whatever the banks require.
Yeah, for refi. Yeah, those LTVs are getting up there now, but still you have to have the equity still. So yeah, that
Right.
makes sense.
And paying all interest for the first 15 years, really, anyways, right? So
Yeah.
you're not paying the
Yeah.
loan down
Your
much.
amortization schedule is a little scary when
Yeah.
you're at the closing table and you look at that baby, you're like, oh boy. Yeah. Um, no, that's awesome. I'm trying to think of any other scenarios, but um, any
It could be
recent,
anything.
yeah,
I mean, it's literally just I just bought a travel trailer, like 2 months ago, the same way. I took over their payments. It's still in his name. I make the payments
interesting.
every month. The insurance is in my name.
So you guys don't do only houses. I know you mentioned that before, but that kind of went over my head. So boats, RVs, these recreational items that people like to splurge on. They're like, oh crap, why did I do that? Now they're underwater per se. So you're like, I will absolutely take over this because now I have a potential asset that I can take over. And is it same approach, just different ways of getting the contract served out? Because obviously, real estate, there's a lot that goes into that, but is it very different for boats, RVs, trailers, whatnot? Or
I haven't done any cars. I did the travel trailer, and it was pretty straightforward. Went to went to the bank and had them notarize some documents. Um, called the DMV and asked them, obviously had to change like
title
the
information?
power of
Or
attorney. Well,
yeah.
it's staying in his name,
Oh yeah, yeah. You're right.
so we don't have
Yeah,
to change all that. I'll pay for the
yeah.
registration. Um, a car, I know the car is weird. Like it has to be registered in the state that they bought it in. Like there's some nuances to it, and I don't really want to buy a car subject to
Yeah. I
anytime
mean, they
soon.
don't really appreciate that well. So,
Yeah.
especially now. I
Well,
mean,
people are
yeah,
doing Turo with them.
yeah. That's a good point. I've actually thought about doing that here in the Springs, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's got to risk it for the biscuit
That's it.
sometimes.
That's it.
Um, no, that's great. Well, I know we have two very busy schedules, and I don't want to take too much of your time. But man, unless you have anything else, man, that was awesome. There was a lot of information in there, a lot to unpack, and I think for people that might listen in later, if you guys have any questions, I'm always available, and I know Daric is very welcoming for questions and obviously any deals. If you other agents out there, you got deals, go send him a message, like chat with this guy. He's awesome. He's available. You want to hang around like-minded individuals that are doing right by other people. And I think that's the kind of the community that I'm trying to build. So I really appreciate your time, man. And yeah, unless you have anything else to add on, I think that'll be it for today. Yeah, man.
I don't have anything. Thank you for having me. Yeah, any questions?
Anytime,
That's my
dude. Yeah.
Instagram. Always
Yeah, I
available.
was gonna mix that. Right there.
There it
Bam.
is. Yeah. Yeah. Cool, brother. I
Cool,
appreciate
brother.
it.
Yep. You guys enjoy. How's the weather? Everyone knows that you're in Arizona. Is the weather getting decent out there? What are we looking at? Ski season?
Decent for me, man. It was 30 degrees when I woke up. So it's
That's not too
58
bad.
now. So I mean,
Oh man.
gave a hitting lesson. I had to take off some layers because I was getting hot.
Nice. Yeah, it's really cold in Colorado right now, so I'm ready for it to warm up a little bit. But
You
yeah, all
got
right, man. Well, yeah, you have a wonderful afternoon, brother, and we'll talk soon.
sounds good. Thanks.
All right, see you, brother.
See ya.